Ducks fans, are you ready? You are listening to the Ducks and Pucks podcast with your hosts, Mike Walters and Eddie Jones. This is the number one home for Anaheim Ducks talk and analysis. Here we go.
Welcome to the show. This is your host, Mike Walters, along with my co-host, Eddie Jones, and we have a great show for you this week. If you're a Ducks fan, you have to be super excited. The Ducks have won 4 in a row now. They won 3 this past week. They're now in first place, 2 points ahead of the San Jose Sharks, Eddie, and you just have to be happy with the way the Ducks have been going this last 3 or 4 weeks now.
Yeah, and it's kind of surprising, too. I mean, I don't think we both expected them to be here at this point in the season, especially you look back, 6, 7, 8 games ago. The gap just seemed too much. San Jose just seemed to be too good of a team, and the fact that now they're sitting 2 points up and really like their destiny is in their own hands in terms of the Pacific Division, and they're fighting almost for a second in the Western Conference because Minnesota struggled as well. So the fact that they could almost get home ice advantage against every team in the Western Conference except for Chicago is a great achievement. And obviously you look at their home record this season, it'd be a huge advantage for them going into the playoffs.
Exactly, and we've got a lot of questions about the Sharks and the Blackhawks and the playoffs, and we'll get to all the fan questions. We also have tons of updates that came out today that we're going to cover as well. Let's look at this week, Eddie. The first big game, we talked about this. We thought the Ducks could beat the Oilers and the Jets, and then obviously the Rangers would be a tougher game, which the Ducks ended up winning all 3, but they started off against the Oilers, and it didn't quite go the way the Ducks wanted in the beginning. The Oilers scored first. Eve scored to tie it up. McDavid made a nice move. He scores, gives Edmonton back the 2-1 lead in the first period. The Ducks do get a late goal by Hampus Lindholm to tie it up. And then from then on, they were able to prevail in this one. Manson and Raquel chipped in with goals in the second period. And then a questionable late goal by Edmonton in the game. But the Ducks ended up winning this one still, Eddie, 4-3.
Yeah, and this is the first time really that they haven't been able to shut down McDavid. I mean, we saw the little bit of the graphic before the Edmonton Oilers game that McDavid only had 2 points in the first 6 games that he's played against the Ducks. And this one, obviously, he goes off for 3, but I think it's credit to the Ducks that they actually were able to still come out and get the win. It was a crazy first period, like you said, ended up finishing 2-2. And then a really solid second period where the Ducks really took over and got the 2 goals in that second period and held on nearly until the end of the game, only with like 7 seconds to go in the third period where the Oilers ended up getting their power play goal. But I think it was a good game. Obviously, it was a big 4-point game at the time, and it's a reason that the Ducks sit atop the Pacific Division right now. And I think a big thing, too, is the lines just seem to be, finally set chemistry-wise. You see in this game, Getzlaf, Raquel, and Eves, that line went off in this game and contributed to 3 of the 4 goals. And I think that's big. I mean, obviously, we've got the Kessler, Silfverberg, Cogliano line, and the fact that you now have this line, and they've been playing so well. They played great this week. And then obviously you've got Perry down there as well with Vermette and Ritchie, I believe, at most times. So I think the chemistry has really helped, and it obviously showed during this week.
Yeah, absolutely. Raquel getting his 32nd goal of the season to lead the way. The Ducks getting some scoring from other people. Lindholm chipping in, Manson chipping in. We're seeing a little bit more of that going on the next, a couple games too, and the past weeks and whatnot. So overall, good performance by the Ducks. A big 4-point game, as you mentioned, and a little bit of controversy in this game, Eddie. The last goal there by the Oilers. I was there in person. They showed it on the Jumbotron. They showed Patrick Maroon was clearly offsides. Both skates on the other side of the blue line received the puck. The refs reviewed it. They ended up giving them the goal. Obviously, there was only 6 seconds left, so it didn't matter. I mean, it could have, but it didn't. And interesting. But they had said that the refs did not have that angle that we, the fans, saw at Honda Center. And I just think that's a little bit troubling. I mean, you'd think that if they had all the camera angles in an arena, you would think the league did too. So it was kind of a weird situation at the end there, Eddie, but the Ducks ended up still winning by 1 goal.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would have been more of an issue if it was a game-tying goal or if it was with a little bit more time left. The fact that maybe it was 7 seconds, maybe it wasn't as much of an issue. But yeah, it is weird to me that they didn't have access to a camera angle that the whole arena has access to. You think the refs would usually have the more exclusive angles to be able to see if it was offside or not. And at least from the angles that I saw on TV, it did look like it was slightly offside and that it shouldn't have counted. Obviously, it didn't hurt them and ended up winning the game, but it's something you would hope that they'd be able to get right most of the time.
Yeah, just kind of interesting. When they had talked about them not being able to see the camera angle. But another part of this game that was interesting too, Eddie, is we saw Bieksa get high sticked in this game. He ended up losing 2 teeth, and no call was made. And we've talked about this. We saw Perry earlier get hit. We've seen other players recently have different high sticks. Nothing happened. And what was kind of interesting is the ref, Wes McCauley, actually apologized to Kevin Bieksa after the game. So I think that's pretty interesting. We talked about the ref before calling the high sticking motion, then not calling the penalty in favor of the Ducks with the Perry situation last week. And now we see this. We actually see a ref apologize after a game. I don't remember the last time I've seen that happen, eh? So that's kind of interesting. And, Bieksa said that it was definitely a classy move by the ref, even though he, lost his 2 teeth.
Yeah, I think it's a good move. I mean, it was obvious, and it turned into kind of a trend over the 3 games this week. It happened in each game, but I think it was good on the ref. That was probably the most vicious of the 3 that we saw this week. The fact that it was missed. I mean, he was bleeding, like you said, he lost a couple teeth as well. So good on the ref for apologizing for missing that. I mean, it's not like it would have changed the situation. All the Ducks would have got is a 4-minute power play, but it is good on the ref to recognize that he made a mistake and go and apologize to Kevin.
And, it actually ended up costing Bieksa a game. He didn't play in the next game against the Jets. Instead, Brandon Montour came in, and, he ended up getting an assist in this game. But the Ducks took on the Jets, the game that you and I said that they should win. Obviously, there's no easy opponent in the league, but the Ducks did prevail in this one, 3-1. And you got to believe Corey Perry scored. We talked about it in the game preview that day that he needed to get going again, and he did. He got the early goal, and Cogliano scored, and then Silfverberg as well. Silfverberg with over 20 goals now this season as well. So the Ducks did good in this one overall. They lost the face-off battle, but besides that, they won this game. They outshot the Jets 35-18, and another solid effort with Bernier net.
Yeah, it was a really strong effort. I mean, they outshot the Jets 35-18, and Hutchinson had a pretty good game. I think the Jets really felt the loss of Dustin Byfuglien in this game. I mean, they still out-hit the Ducks, but Trouba ended up playing almost 30 minutes in this game, and then the minutes after that were spread out between Melichori and Morrissey, and 2 guys you really don't expect to see over 20 minutes did see that many minutes in this game. So I think that's what affected the Jets a lot in this game. Obviously, the Ducks, like I said, they played a strong game in this one. Perry ended up getting his goal, and the Kessler, Silfverberg, Cogliano line was the one that stepped up in this game. So a strong effort, probably the easiest win of the week that we would have expected them to win, and a key win in their pursuit to win the Pacific Division.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as we talked about, the Ducks, if they're going to make their push, they got to beat everybody, whether they're a weak opponent or a strong opponent. So this was another good effort by the Ducks. You saw Wagner out there hitting people again, laying the body out there, and just a good game overall by the Ducks. Probably the only thing that's still been a little bit troubling has been the power play, Eddie. The Ducks were 0 for 5 against Edmonton. They're 0 for 3 tonight. That's the one thing I would like to see the Ducks pick it up in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, it kind of seems like the goal scoring has picked up a little bit. I mean, obviously they got 4 against Edmonton, they got 3 against the Jets, and then the 6 in the next game against the Rangers. But out of all three of those games, there was only 1 power play goal, and that's something that still has struggled. I mean, it seems like a trend now. Every time we get on a power play, you're like, oh, can they finally get one in this one? And of course, our only power play goal was off a deflection that almost wasn't a goal. So, I mean, it's definitely something that needs to pick up for the playoffs. But the fact that they're actually starting to score more goals and being able to win games, 4-3 instead of 2-1 or 1-0 is definitely an advantage.
Yeah, you talk about scoring more goals. The Rangers came to town on Sunday. We talked about this being probably the most difficult matchup. The Rangers had beaten the Ducks earlier in the season. And, this game started out kind of wild, too, just like the Edmonton game. You had Rick Nash scored first. Patrick Eaves answered. Stefan scored and put the Rangers back up 2-1. But then you had Kessler with the 1 power play goal, as we talked about this week. And so at the end of the first period, this game was 2-2, just like the game against Edmonton. You see Josh Manson get another goal shorthanded. He's had a couple in the recent weeks. And then, the Ducks really poured it on in the third period, Eddie. I mean, Cogliano scored, Eve scored, Richie scored. And it was good to see the Ducks, they really put New York away in this game 6-3 and, catapulted the Ducks all the way to first place this week, 2 points ahead of the Sharks and now Edmonton as well.
Yeah, and really, I mean, they almost played a complete game except for the three Rangers goals. I mean, all of them were odd man rushes, and the Rangers capitalized on all of them. But I think it was a strong effort. The Rangers are one of the best road teams in the NHL, and for you to come out and win, and not just win in a close game, to win 6-3 and dominate in the third period. I think that was a real big statement game for them. The Rangers are a very good team, and the Ducks seemed in control for most of the game, obviously, except for the turnovers that ended up leading to goals. And I don't see that being a problem long term. We haven't seen it that often, especially not 3 times in one game. So this might just be a one-off. Obviously, it's something to look for in the next games coming up. But I think it was a strong performance. The Ducks knew that they'd have to win this game to put themselves in the Pacific Division lead, and they battled through the first 2 periods, and they really took advantage of the fact that the Rangers had played the night before against the Kings in the third, and came out strong and got those 2 goals, and then obviously the empty netter by Richie. So a big game, and obviously a key one for them to now be 2 points up in the Pacific Division. It's definitely a place we didn't expect them to be at this point.
Yeah, exactly. And that was one of the fan questions we had, is talking about the Ducks and how they were doing. We talked about them being a playoff team, but not necessarily being a Stanley Cup team, and that's kind of what Braden alluded to. If we're kind of eating our words, whether or not they're a contender or not. I think looking at this week and obviously the last couple of weeks, I've talked about this the last couple of shows. The Ducks are a playoff team, that's for sure. We didn't know how far they would go, and whether or not they're a cup contender team. And a couple other fans asked those questions as well, Eddie. And I still think it's up for debate whether or not they're a cup contending team. But as far as being a playoff team, absolutely, they're a playoff team for sure. I definitely think they can get past the first round, second round too, possibly. After that, I don't know, Eddie. It's going to be interesting because we still have to figure out the goalie situation.
Yeah, and I think they can get through the first 2 rounds. I mean, we always knew they were going to be a playoff team. But yeah, the real issue was cup contender, and I think they've been playing like it lately. I still find it difficult to believe that Bernier is going to lead us to a Stanley Cup. I mean, great kudos to him for playing the way he's been playing over his last, I don't know, is it 10 games now, the way he's been playing. Mm-hmm. So he's been a real key to the Ducks' success. But I don't know if he's the guy that's going to take them all the way to win a cup. But I like the first round matchups that they could possibly get. Right now, if the playoffs started today, they'd play Calgary in the first round, and then they'd play either Edmonton or San Jose, I believe, in the second round. And I think they have a good shot against all the Pacific Division teams. Obviously, there's a lot of familiarity there. I think the Ducks are a better team. San Jose would still be a tough one. They obviously been struggling late with their losing 6 games in a row, but they're still a good team, and that'd be the toughest opponents of the 4. But yeah, I think it really does come down to goaltending. Is Gibson going to be 100% healthy and ready to go, or are they going to have to go with Bernier? I think that's the big key decider going into the playoffs. I think Gibson is good enough to lead us to a Stanley Cup. We obviously saw Murray do it for the Penguins last year. As for Bernier, I don't want to put him down with the way he's been playing lately. I just don't see him being able to do it. I mean, he's a great backup goaltender, but I don't know if he's a Stanley Cup winning goaltender.
And that is the big question a lot of people are asking about. And you and I really debated this last show. And, some stats to throw out here, okay, is Bernier's last game that he lost in regulation, March 5th against Vancouver. Since then, he's been 8-0-1, goals against 1.64, and save percentage of 944. So, I mean, he's really been tearing it up lately. I think that he could get the Ducks pretty far, Eddie. Maybe to disagree a little bit, I don't know if he could win the cup for the team, but I think if Gibson's not healthy and we have to ride Bernier, I think the Ducks could at least get to the Western Conference Final. What do you think, Eddie?
Yeah, I mean, it all comes down to, is he going to continue playing like this? I mean, we saw earlier in the season that he struggled, and it looked like the Bernier we're used to seeing it. And, I've honestly never seen him play this well, even with the Leafs and early on with the Kings. I think this is the best stretch he's ever had in his career. So, I mean, it might be him finally turning around and becoming the goalie everybody thought he was going to be. Or it could just be a really hot stretch, and it depends on how long that lasts for. So I think he could win us a couple rounds, but it's just tough for me to say because we've all seen the other side of this coin with Bernier and how he can play on other nights. Just to say that he can come out and play 20, 25 games in a playoff series and win you 16 games, it's just tough for me to believe. But I mean, if he plays like the way he's been playing over these last 9, 10 games in the playoffs, then for sure he can take us there. I think it all depends on the consistency of his play leading into the playoffs.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's going to be the key. That one of the fan questions in here too is about the Ducks, how they've been playing over the last few weeks, and what do they need to do? Like, what's changed? Basically, Travis asked us over the last couple weeks and even these last couple games. And I think the biggest thing is the team defense. And I think that the team has been playing really great in front of Bernier, obviously in the last 10 games. And then the one game Gibson came in, they didn't play as well. Granted, there was a few things going on in that game when Gibson came back because he wasn't 100%. So I think that's the other part of this issue is here. I think Bernier's playing better. The team defense is playing better. But if Gibson's not 100%, I hope they don't rush him back. We learned today that Enroth was sent down to the goals and that Carlisle's saying that Gibson could play on this upcoming road trip. But you have to be a little bit concerned, Eddie, because if he's not 100%, then right now you'd rather just ride Bernier and maybe play Gibson when the Ducks do know if they're first, second, or third, or how they're going to be seated in the playoffs.
Yeah, I think you don't want to bring him back until he's 100% healthy. We've seen the adverse effects of that through the NHL this season. I mean, recently we saw Ekblad for the Florida Panthers. He came back too early, and now he's going to be out for possibly the rest of the season for the Panthers. And their coach and general manager came out and said, well, it's my fault. I shouldn't have pushed him back too early. And now he's going to be out for at least 5 games to the end of the season. And we don't want to see that with Gibson because the Ducks are actually going to be going to the playoffs, and he's a key piece to that. So obviously, I'd like to see him get in at least 2 or 3 games before the playoffs start, just to get on, get back into the feel of things and get used to taking shots from NHL players. But if he's not 100% healthy, then it's going to be difficult to work him in. I mean, that's why I want him to get a couple games going. The Ducks, by the time if he comes back with 3 games to go or 4 games to go, will most likely have clinched a playoff spot. It will be a little bit less pressure. They can put him in on an easier game and hopefully work him back into the feel of things and get him ready to go. But you never know. You don't, like you said, you don't want to bring him back too early against, say, like the game against Vancouver tomorrow or the game against Winnipeg if he's not ready to go, and then he injures himself again and he's out for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, the point of the schedule where I could definitely see him coming in is the Ducks are going to play Edmonton on Saturday, and then they're going to play Calgary the day after. So I could see him playing in one of those 2 games. Eddie, maybe Bernier plays Vancouver or Winnipeg. We see what happens with San Jose, who, by the way, has been losing their face. They've lost 6 in a row. Maybe their social media people, they've been a little quiet lately. I'm not really sure why, but hey, after the Ducks beat them, they were pretty loud and boisterous about being in first, but they're falling apart. So if they keep losing. And then obviously these games against Edmonton and Calgary are huge. They keep winning as well, and Edmonton's tied with the Ducks, and Calgary's right behind both of them. That may be the time that we'll see Eddie because it'll be a back-to-back situation.
Yeah, I think that is realistic. That'd probably be the latest we'd see him. I think sending Enroth down is a good sign. Definitely don't think we see him tomorrow against Vancouver. I think Winnipeg would probably be the earliest that we'd see him, depending on how ready he is to go. If not, then like you said, either against Edmonton on the Saturday or Calgary on the Sunday, depending on what they want to do. And I think that all, again, depends on how healthy he is, or, it could also depend on the numbers that Bernier has against either the Oilers or the Flames, and usually a lot of that goes into goaltending decisions. But I would hope we would see him then. I would love to see him either Saturday or Sunday. Obviously, those are big games, though, for him to come back against. I mean, they're 4-point games, and their teams are right around us in the standings. Normally it would have been as big of a deal. I mean, the fact that the Ducks are in this spot, every game is key now, and it's difficult to work a guy back into the lineup, especially a goaltender. And, we didn't expect San Jose to lose 6 games in a row. The Ducks have picked up 11 points on the Sharks in those 6 games that the Sharks lost, because they lost all 6 in regulation. I mean, they were down 6 games ago. They were down 9 points on the Sharks, and the fact that now they're 2 points up on them, it just puts a whole new spin on their upcoming games, and it makes it difficult to, like I said, to work a goalie back in. But you got to do it eventually if you want to run during the playoffs, and I think realistically, the Oilers on the first or the Flames on the second is a good place to put them in.
Yeah, exactly. I agree with you. And like you said, with the whole Sharks thing, that's one of the questions that Trevor asked. He said a few weeks ago we didn't think the Ducks were going to win the division. Did we believe that? Yeah, we really didn't think the Ducks were going to win the division. It's not that we don't think the Ducks are a good team, but we just didn't think San Jose was going to have this epic collapse and lose 6 games in a row. I mean, the Ducks were able to beat them that one game, which was, again, another huge 4-point game. But now to see San Jose choking, literally, I mean, it's crazy now. So what's going on with the Ducks? Obviously, the goalie situation you and I talked about is huge. We've talked about the power play as well. Another fan question that goes towards the offense is about Patrick Eaves, and Adam asks about, the Ducks have been criticized because Bob Murray only picked up Eaves. He didn't get anybody on the trade deadline. None of that top 6 scorer that you and I have talked about probably ad nauseum, like every podcast all the way back to last summer. So what's the deal with Eaves and whether or not the Ducks will re-sign him, and does it depend on the playoffs? There's a lot of stuff going on in this question, but I think. I mean, we still weren't happy with the trade deadline. I think obviously Eaves coming in, you're seeing him scoring these goals. He's adding. It's huge. Now, it is going to depend on the playoff performance. It almost always does when you see these type of players that you get and see how far you go in the playoffs. But I don't know if they will re-sign him, Eddie. I mean, the Ducks are so tight against the cap. We saw what happened with Perron and McGinn last year, Stewart, all these other guys that left, for whatever reason. I know Perron was saying it was more of a Murray last season, but whatever the reasoning is, I mean, the Ducks are in a worse position than the cap now. So I'm glad that Eaves is working out. He's helping, and the Ducks are able to, perform right now, even without that top 6 scorer that we had talked about. But I just don't know if they'll resign Eaves based upon the salary cap.
Yeah, I mean, you have to realize, too, I mean, this was probably our most asked question this week is if we're going to re-sign. I mean, for good reason, he's been playing really well lately, but, he's only making, I believe, like $1 million right now, and he's due for a substantial raise, especially if he actually does reach 30 goals this season, which he's closing in on. So there's a good chance he could reach 30. And you're going to expect him to at least get 3, 4, maybe even 5 if some team's willing to pay him that much. That's a little high, but some teams could overpay to get a guy like that in their team. And you have to look at his stats too. I mean, he doesn't do this that often. He's had a great season this year with the Stars and now with the Ducks. And realistically, he is a third line guy. Do you want to pay $4 or $5 million for a guy that might score you 20 goals each season? I think he's been a great addition for the Ducks this year. I just don't see him coming back next year. And we've talked about this after the trade deadline too. I mean, the Ducks essentially have to move a defenseman unless they want to lose Josh Manson for free. That's when I see them picking up a top 6 forward, and then you can allow a guy like Eaves to go. I still think that's the most realistic option. I think his salary is going to be, his raise that he's expected to get is going to be too much for the Ducks to afford. They might go out and grab a guy similar to that, a $1 or $2 million guy who could hopefully produce at the same rate on the third line for us next year. But realistically, I do see us going and getting that top 6 scorer in the offseason, whether it be before the expansion draft or during the actual draft. Realistically, it's something they have to do this year unless they want to lose a guy like Josh Manson to Vegas for nothing.
Yeah, and I agree with you. We talked about that. We thought it would happen at the trade deadline. It didn't get done, but I'm pretty sure Murray's going to work on that, like you said, in the offseason, whenever that does come, leading up to the expansion draft and whatnot, because you'd hate to see, Manson go for nothing, unless he works some other kind of magic. So, yeah, that's what I would think would be the game plan for the offseason. Now, going back to the playoffs, and what we've got going on now, we got another interesting question. This is a good one. Say the Ducks do win these first couple rounds, they go to the Western Conference Final, they win that, and then they get to the actual Stanley Cup Final. So Darren asks, who would you want them to play if they get to the Stanley Cup Final? I know who I don't want them to play. There's a bunch of teams, but who would you want them to play, Eddie, if we got that far?
Oh, nobody from the Metro for sure.
Exactly.
I don't want to see them have to play Washington or Pittsburgh or Columbus or even the Rangers. I mean, those are the four best teams in the Eastern Conference, all from the same division. So realistically, I wouldn't want to see them play either of them. You can give me the Leafs in the final if you want. You give me Ottawa, Montreal, Boston. I'd take any of them over any of those four teams from the Metro. But no team is easy, and if they make it all the way there, obviously, if the Leafs make it all the way there, if the Sens make it all the way there, if Montreal makes it all the way there, there's a reason they made it there. So it's still going to be a difficult opponent, but some of these teams are just built to win Stanley Cups, and obviously Pittsburgh is one of them. They won it last year. Washington arguably has the best lineup on paper in the NHL. Columbus probably going to have Bobrovsky win the Vezina this year. They've got guys scoring for them all over the lineup. So those are going to be teams that are going to be very, very difficult to play if you meet them in the Stanley Cup Finals. And they're going to be teams who all have home ice advantage, which is going to be another thing that it would be difficult for the Ducks to overcome in the final round there. So I think it would be definitely, if I had to pick, it would be somebody from the Atlantic Division.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think all those teams in the Metro are. I mean, the Ducks can beat them. We just saw them beat the Rangers. But, I mean, like you said, those are tough teams. Washington, Pittsburgh, are you kidding me? Columbus is having a great season as well. So, yeah, I would hope, you don't want to pick the easier opponent and then they beat you. But if you had to be a betting man, you'd want to take somebody from the Atlantic Division. But before the Ducks, if they are able to get there, another fan asked about, well, people are saying that it might be the Blackhawks and the Ducks in the Western Conference final. Just like the Sharks have been losing, and now we see Minnesota losing. Chicago's now looking more like the favorite again in there. So what do you think if the Ducks have to go through Chicago again to get the Stanley Cup final?
I mean, that does look realistic right now with the way the Ducks are playing, the way the Sharks have fallen off. Minnesota's been bad lately. I mean, it's tough seeing any team in the Central beating Chicago right now with the way they've all been playing. I mean, that would be a tough one for me to handle again. I mean, we've had so many experiences all bad against playing Chicago in the playoffs, and for it to happen again would just top it all off. I don't honestly know what they would do differently. I mean, it is a different team this year. It's run by a different coach, obviously be approached differently, but I think if you look at the last times they've played Chicago, I think this would be the best time to play them. They're a different team. Obviously, they're doing really good. Their record states that they're one of the best teams in the NHL, but they're almost transitioning in a way that is working out for them. But they've got a lot of rookies in their lineup. They've got Nick Schmaltz, Tanner Kiro. They've got a lot of other guys in their lineup as well, and it's a different team. I mean, the core is still there: Taves, Kane, Hossa, Keith, Seabrook, Crawford. But I think the Ducks could push through them this year. I think they have the ability to do it. Obviously, it'd be tough. You'd be playing 4 games at the United Center, which is always a difficult place to play. The Blackhawks have a great home record this season as well. And it would be one that would probably push to Game 7 with how well both the teams are on home ice. So I just don't know. There's no way to really draw it out. I think it'd be a close series, and in the end, it would have to come down to Game 7, in my opinion. And can the Ducks break that curse with a new coach? We'd have to see.
I agree with you, Eddie. I think the way that the Ducks are going now, they could definitely win the first 2 rounds and then go to the Western Conference Finals. We talked about earlier in the show, and if it ends up against Chicago, yeah, you bet it's going to go at least 6 for sure. I mean, if not 7. I mean, it's going to have to. If that's, in fact, the 2 teams that end up in the Western Conference Final, it's going to be a battle. And like you said, if it goes down to Game 7, unfortunately, it's going to most likely be in Chicago unless somehow Chicago loses a bunch of games, the Ducks keep winning. I mean, there's still a lot of variables going on. We still got a couple of weeks to go, but that's what it would look like now. So it's definitely interesting. I think the Ducks are in a much better position the way that they're playing now. As we talked about, the power play is probably the only thing that's kind of been lacking, but otherwise they're getting more scoring. They're getting it from secondary sources. Bernier's playing out of his mind. The defense is playing solid. Now, everything's going right for the Ducks, and they're looking good. Another team that it's not looking good for, Eddie, and that we had a person ask about is Khalid. He asks about the Kings. And the Kings, when will they be eliminated? Well, let's talk about this. If the Ducks win on Tuesday against Vancouver, they will clinch a playoff spot, and they won't have to worry about the Kings. If the Ducks lose in regulation and then the Kings get some kind of loss, the Ducks will clinch their playoff spot on Tuesday. As far as the Kings situation goes, though, Eddie, they're almost done. I mean, they've really got to win out the rest of their games to even have a chance. I think, what is it, 5 points, and then they'll be done.
Yep, they're 9 points back of St. Louis right now with the same amount of games played. There's almost no way for them to even get back into the Pacific Division race. They're almost just fighting for a wild card spot here. And like you said, they'd have to win out pretty much the rest of their games to even get close. They've got a couple games. I know their next one comes on the road against the Oilers tomorrow. Their road record is awful. And obviously losing to the Oilers wouldn't help them anyway. That would completely almost solidify the fact that they wouldn't be able to. I believe the Oilers would also clinch a playoff spot if they won against the Kings on that night as well. But yeah, I mean, like you said, 5 points away from being eliminated. I don't see any chance of them getting in. But the Blues have been on a roll. They're playing tonight against Arizona. If they win, they move another 2 points up on the Kings. So, it's a matter of time now. Probably 3 or 4 games from now, the Kings will be eliminated, and we can all make fun of them and be happy.
Yeah, and then the Bishop sweepstakes then will begin, as we'll find out where is he going to go after this season, which kind of unfortunate, that ended up being the way it went down for him and Budai. But that's what the Kings in Tampa Bay decided to do, and that's what they're going to have to live with. We'll see what happens, come the offseason for those guys. But like we said, with the way the Ducks are going, things have been going good. A lot of news came out today too, Eddie. Regarding this last week and different things going on. We're talking about players doing well. We had Getzlaf did well this last week. He had 7 assists in these 3 games, and he got named the 3rd star this week.
Yeah, I mean, well-deserving, too. You had some other great players along with him. Kucherov got 1st star, and Kari Lehtinen got 2nd star of the week for the performances they had. But Getzlaf was, the best player in 2 games this week. He was the best player against the Oilers, had 3 assists in that one, and the best player against the Rangers had 4 assists in that one. I mean, he's been on a tear lately, really since the All-Star break, and he's almost at a point per game now. 66 points in 68 games. He's definitely been the Ducks' best player this season. Maybe not at the early part where it was Kessler and Silfverberg, but the fact that he's been consistent and be able to drive his play when it matters late in the season here, he's definitely well deserving of that. And he's going to be a key factor for the Ducks in the playoffs. Obviously, if they're going to go far, he's going to have to keep playing like this. And I think if he can continue racking up the assists. He's got 52 this season. That sits him 4th in the league. I mean, that's what he's known for. But the fact he also has 14 goals this season, too, isn't nothing to sniff at, especially for him. So it's great to see him playing well, and it's obviously going to be key to the Ducks' success moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, it's great. I mean, Bernier was named the 2nd star the week before. So you're getting, players are doing well, and they're getting up there, and they're getting recognized by the league, too, which is good. Oftentimes we see sometimes the Ducks aren't always recognized by the league. Speaking of that, another player, Andrew Cogliano, he was nominated from the Ducks for the Bill Masterson Award. He's been nominated for this before, and that's the player that shows the best qualities of perseverance, sportsmanship, and dedication to hockey. So that's another good honor for him, Eddie. And I don't know if he'll get it this time around, but definitely well deserving of the nomination.
Yeah, I mean, you have to say that. I mean, he's the reigning Ironman, 779 consecutive games. He's the definition of perseverance, really. We see him almost go down with injury about 3 or 4 times a season. He gets back up, comes right back out, and plays the next game. So if you had to pick anyone, it has to be Cogliano. Will he win it this year? I don't know. There's a lot of very good candidates always from each team, so it's a tough trophy to win. There's a lot of good guys out there in the league, but I think this is a good nomination for him. I mean, he's been nominated for it, I believe, 4 times now. So, he's just a good guy in the locker room, good guy off the ice. Like you said, the fact that he's played 779 consecutive games obviously chips into the factor of him being nominated as well.
Yeah, exactly. Like you said, you see him get beat so many times in games. And he's, he'll go to the locker room and, he'll be gone a minute or 2 and he's back. That's just the way he is. And Ducks fans know that. We've seen him, and that's why we call him the Iron Man, because that's what he is. He just takes the licks and he just keeps on going. So well deserving for him. Some other updates that happened too in the last couple weeks here. Some of the minor league stuff going on. We saw Clayton Stoner come back and play for the Gulls the other night. He actually got in a fight, and we posted that on Twitter, or the Gulls did, and we quoted it. And so that was good to see him. And they were saying that along with Gibson coming on this road trip, Eddie, they're saying that there's a possibility that Stoner could come on this road trip. So that's good to see the Ducks getting back another solid, tough defenseman, which we've had people that criticize Stoner, but when it comes playoff time, he's a valuable person to have on the blue line.
Yeah, I mean it's just more depth to add at the right time. We've been used to guys getting injured at this time of the season, so the fact that Stoner is ready to come back and is going to be healthy for the hopefully a long playoff run is good. Gibson looks almost ready to come back, so with these guys coming back, it just adds to the Ducks' depth. Never a bad thing to have more depth on the blue line. You've now got Holzer, who will be there for a depth guy. You've got Stoner now. Obviously, Montour might it might even open up the door for Montour to go back down to the AHL because obviously the Gulls have clinched the playoff spot now, and they're going to need him as well. So that could open the door for Stoner to come back and play regularly. It all depends on what they are attempting to do with Montour or not. Obviously, if they think he's a valuable piece for the Ducks, then he's going to stay up here. But there also is the chance that he could be sent back to the Gulls and try and go on a long playoff run with them.
Yeah, exactly. As you said, the Gulls clinched the playoffs too this last week, which is great for them. They're going to get back Enroth. He, as we said, he got sent down earlier in the show. He's 12-3. And his games played with the Gulls and 1.74 goals against and 9.35 save percentage. So he's been doing very well down in San Diego. So he's going to help them out. Like you said, maybe Montour goes back down, and we'll see how they do. So the Gulls are rolling. They're in the playoffs. The Ducks should clinch this week too. So it's, everything's going good in Anaheim and San Diego. As far as Ducks fans go, the Ducks have been rolling, and the minor league team's playing well. And so have some of the other minor league players too, Eddie. Sam Steele, Troy Terry, Alex Dostie, they've all had some good games this week. So what's been going on with these three guys?
Well, all three of them had 5-point games this week, so it was a great week for Ducks prospects. Dostie had 3 goals and 2 assists in Charlottetown's second playoff game. And was the number one star in that game as well. I mean, that's a loaded team. They've got Pittsburgh Penguins prospect Daniel Sprong. They've got Ottawa Senators prospect Philip Shalapik on their team as well. So, for him to come out and have a great game like that's great for him, especially being a late round pick as well, a guy that we talked to when he first got drafted.
Yep.
It's great for us to see him doing well, especially on one of the best teams in the QMJHL. And then you move over to Sam Steele, who's who is right now this season the best player in the CHL, playing on the best team in the CHL, in the Regina Pats. He came off having only 1 assist in his first game and had 1 goal and 4 assists in their second game, and was the first star in that game as well. And then you've got Troy Terry. I mean, the World Junior hero for the U.S. Denver had their game against Notre Dame to get into the Frozen Four, and he comes out and he gets 3 goals and 2 assists in that game, and was the best performer for Denver on that night. So just a great week for Ducks prospects. 3 5-point games. Max Jones also had 2 goals, 2 empty net goals for the Knights to win the game for them too. So a big week for Ducks prospects, that's for sure.
Yeah, exactly. And 2 empty net goals by the same player. That's pretty crazy too. So, all these guys are rolling. So everything's going good for the Ducks this week, and the organization top to bottom. We've got this road trip coming up, Eddie. Again, it's going to be big. The Ducks are going to play Vancouver and then Winnipeg. 2 games. Again, they should win, but they lost to Vancouver last time. So we'll see what happens in these 2 games. And then, as we talked about, they got the back-to-back games with Edmonton and Calgary coming on the weekend. So we plan to have a podcast after that. And don't forget, they're going to play Calgary again, following that. So they're going to play Calgary actually twice, once back at home. So this is going to be huge, these last final 2 weeks, Eddie. But, the way the Ducks are going right now, we talked about it last week. We thought they'd win 2 out of 3. They won all 3. This week, there's no reason for them not to win all 4 of these games, if not at least 3 of them.
Yeah, and I think these are important too because this is the longest road trip since the beginning of February. They had only 3 road games so far this month. They played the 1-0 win against Chicago, 4-3 loss against St. Louis, and then the 2-1 win against San Jose. So they had only 3 road games. So, and you look at the record too on the season, just 500. on the road. And that, I mean, we talked about having to improve the power play. Their road play is definitely going to have to improve if they're going to make a long run in the playoffs. And I think this is a good way to get it started and have a good road games moving into the playoffs. And these are teams you should be beating, especially at this time of the season. You know, these teams are obviously trying to play spoiler now, but the Vancouver Canucks are a team the Ducks should be beating. The Jets are a team the Ducks should be beating as well. And then the big two key games back-to-back on Saturday and Sunday against the Oilers and the Flames. And you know, the Ducks, yeah, they're sitting in first right now, but these are two teams that could still catch them. You know, the Pacific Division is within 5 points for any team, and obviously the Oilers and the Sharks are only 2 points behind. And with the Flames winning right now and only being 5 points behind the Ducks, you know, there's 2 games that they play against the Ducks before the end of the season. So those are going to be big games. And I think if they can come out and win at least 3 of these road games and get on a roll on the road heading into the playoffs, it's going to be good for them to make a long run.
Yeah, exactly. And like you said, I mean, you're playing Edmonton, Calgary twice, all 4-point games. You know, the Ducks, like you said, they can end up in first, they can end up in fourth. Even San Jose now could end up in fourth, you know. So, I mean, there's a lot to be decided in these last 2 weeks. The Ducks will even also play Chicago, like we talked about earlier. It could be a Western Conference final preview. Then they'll finish the season against the Kings, you know, in a game that probably won't mean too much. You know, at that point, we'll have to see what happens here. It could. The way this division's going, at least for the Ducks. We know for Kings fans, boo-hoo, it's not going to be much for you guys. But, you know, for us, I mean, it may mean something. But, I mean, obviously we still want to win that game, of course. So it's going to be a good couple weeks coming up here. Like you said, good road trip. Ducks need to keep it going, maybe improve on the power play and whatnot. And that's what they'll need to do, really. Other than that, get healthy and keep on rolling. And on this road trip, don't forget on March 30th, they're going to play the Jets. We will have a watch party at the Orange Circle at Avila El Ranchito. The game starts at 5 o'clock, so hopefully you can make it. You know, Fuel Hill is usually there. He was at our last one. You give away some prizes and whatnot. We hang out and you meet other Ducks fans. Just a good time, good food, some good specials as well. So hopefully you can make it out on the 30th for that. And other than that, you know, be happy. The Ducks are winning. The organization's doing well. And we'll see you in about a week.